Two men in the Tennessee Valley are working to preserve the history of enslaved African Americans who were tied to the land along the Muscle Shoals of the Tennessee River. 48's Jasmyn Cornell spoke to those men who wrote this book. And Jasmyn, tell us more about how they're working to preserve history.
Written by Houston Cobb, one of the community's longest living members of Muscle Shoals, and Butch Walker, the Black Folk Tales of the Muscle Shoals is a collection of stories from Black people interviewed by the authors. They both had one mission: to share the history of African Americans in the area. So they spent hours, many hours together discussing the history of Black people and authored the book. Walker says it took more than a decade to put it all together. Cobb, a descendant of enslaved Black people from northwestern Alabama, interviewed people during the 1980s. Walker also interviewed Black people in the area. He says most people spent their lives around the Town Creek Triangle of the Muscle Shoals area. He and managing editor Angela Broyle say the history of Black people in the Shoals isn't in Alabama's history books, and it's difficult to examine the history of the area without addressing the role enslaved Black people played in the area's growth.
This is going to be a huge link for different people in their family history research, because there's not a lot available because they were treated as property rather than as a person. Both of us are highly motivated to see history preserved in such a manner that families can go back and find their roots and where they came from. And that was the same thing with Mr. Cobb.
The Black Folk Tales of Muscle Shoals also shares a brief history of the relationship of American Indians and Black people who call the area home. Coming up in our next half hour of news, we'll hear more about this story from author Houston Cobb. Reporting live, I'm Jasmyn Cornell. Back to you, Haley.